Celebrating 46 years on the air, award-winning Farmweek is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farmweek, weather, the theme of the day, lots of it around the country. And speaking of weather, late in the week, more rain and nearly catastrophic flooding in the Magnolia State. In southern gardening, Gary says, everybody out of the pool, we've got some landscaping to do. And in our feature, a deeper look at a water battle between Colorado and Nebraska. Farmweek starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Good to have you with us again here on Farm Week. Between drought and thunderstorms, weather on the minds of many these days. In the south and southwest, 2 waves of heavy rain took their toll. Here at Farm Week, we crafted one weather update, and it wasn't long before it was time for another. Peter Tubbs has our first report.
Heavy rain swept across the south this week, flooding thousands of homes in multiple states, sparking both state and federal responses.
And yesterday is the second worst rainstorm and flooding in Dallas since 1932, and the second worst on record. And so what people in the Dallas area, as well as this entire region, sustained was an extraordinary challenge.
Early in the week, more than 10 inches of rain fell in a 24-hour period in the drought-parched Dallas-Fort Worth metro, flooding streets and stranding motorists.
We got hit pretty hard, and we got hit in a historic way. The sky opened up, and soon after, our streets closed down. The storm was immense.
The same system dropped 15 inches of rain on East Texas, sending rivers out of their banks. 23 Texas counties were declared disaster areas from the rain system, activating state resources for the affected counties. The heavy rain won't help a drought-damaged cotton crop.
You know, it's basically too late to help the cotton crop on the high plains. High plains of Texas, that's the largest cotton growing area in the United States. Looks like a 10 to 12% crop. Even the irrigated cotton out there it looks terrible. Cotton's going to be short supply this time.
Mississippi also took heavy rain from the system, stranding motorists and blocking access to rural communities.
When the water comes down that fast and that quick, it has nowhere to go, and that's when the water bag up.
Further east, flash flood warnings were issued across central and southern Mississippi. Schools in the region are closed until floodwaters recede. The storms gave Jackson, Mississippi, its wettest August on record.
The whole town is almost flooded. This is ridiculous.
A thunderstorm stranded 200 visitors and staff for several hours at the Carlsbad Caverns in southern New Mexico due to flash flooding. Trails in the national park remain closed. The region has seen multiple floods this summer as pocket storms drop heavy rains over small areas. A levee was breached in Duncan, Arizona in the wake of the storms. The Gila River, swollen by rains from the recent system, overwhelmed the dirt barrier. Dozens of residents were evacuated ahead of the floodwaters. More wet weather is predicted across the south and southwest this weekend.
And that's exactly what happened. No sooner did one thunderstorm pound Magnolia State than another rolled in and took its toll. Farm Week's Jonah Holland is in studio with more on the storm's aftermath. Jonah?
Thanks, Mike. Many in Mississippi are counting their blessings this week. What was expected to be catastrophic flooding fell just short of that mark. And while it was bad enough, it could have been worse. CNN's Isabel Rosales has this report.
The original forecast called for the Pearl River to reach a major stage of flooding. That didn't happen. The forecast, in fact, has drastically improved. In just under 3 hours ago, right here, I would be standing in water right now. But that water clearly is receding and fast.
This water's coming up again. I'm worried about, is it going to come in?
Record rain in the region over the past few days has made its way to the Pearl River near Jackson. On the rise and expected to crest Monday, just shy of major flood stage. Over the weekend, the governor declared parts of Mississippi under a state of emergency, and the mayor urged people in the flood zone to get out before the water moved in.
We need our residents to take heed to these warnings. and move out quickly.
Those who followed official advice prepared, packed, and departed.
You don't what to expect for the unknown, so you end up blind for a lot of stuff, and you just got to come back and hope for the best.
Many had done this before. The river hit 36.67 feet just 2 years ago, damaging much of the city. Mickey and Anitra Holder say they hadn't fully bounced back from that. Now there's this.
The home and the stuff inside now is material things. We can't worry about material things. We can replace them. As long as I got my kids and my wife out, nothing else matters.
Their faith planted firmly in place while so much in their community shifted. Water where it shouldn't be. Roads no longer where they once were. But Monday, better news. The river expected to crest more than a foot below that 2020 high water mark. With hope, the worst is over this time. Well, the water did come close to several homes here. We've heard from Jackson City officials that they have no reports of water actually reaching or damaging any homes, which is great news. In Jackson, Mississippi, I'm Isabel Rosales.
So, 2 storms brought with them heavy rains and flooding that forced many out of their homes temporarily. As a result, the city of Jackson declared a water system emergency when treatment plants failed, a resulting water shortage expected to last at least a few days. Zach?
Thanks, Jonah. In news possibly related to the flood, some see climate change as the cause for more frequent storms. The world is expected to get much warmer over the next few decades. Heat waves are likely to increase threefold by the year 2100, according to a recent study. Among the regions likely to feel the effects, the U.S., China, and Japan. But researchers say the tropics will get hit the worst. They say residents there could see dangerous heat, where temperatures reach at least 103 degrees Fahrenheit most days of the year. The projections are based on the assumption that average global temperatures will increase by 2 degrees Celsius, about 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The rate set in the 2015 Paris Agreement.
A group of farm workers arrived in Sacramento a few days ago after a 355-mile journey across California. The 24-day pilgrimage was to drum up support for a bill that makes it easier for them to vote in union elections. It specifically calls for the right to vote by mail or by proxy. Governor Gavin Newsom has expressed support for farm workers to organize. However, he opposes the bill in its current form because he says the mail-in election process it calls for is not tested. His office is still negotiating key components of the bill.
On the lighter side, looking for a little poolside punctuation? This week on Southern Gardening, Gary Bachman visits with his friends Tricia and Mac. Their pool is the centerpiece for ornamental and edible plants. Here's Gary.
I really love a landscape that's creative and blends different styles. Let's take a look at Tricia and Mac's Poolside Oasis. One of the attributes I like about this garden is the mixing of ornamental and edible plants. As you walk up the drive, tomatoes are being grown in 25-gallon containers. These are acting as an edible screen in front of the pool pump house. Behind the pool is a block retaining wall with great colorful plantings. The Cora Red and Mediterranean White Polka Dot Annual Vinca add color along the top of the wall. The dark green foliage of Lucky Red Lantana with the brightly colored flowers adds interest. Bell peppers add height to the planting and are great edible landscape additions. Concrete urns with the tropical hibiscus are perfect placed around the pool. I really like the variety Cajun paprika that adds some spice to the landscape. I like the maroon MSU bulldog bench beside the pool. The upright pointing foliage of the bright green alocasia adds some softness to the block retaining wall. And to add color and interest, there are nice combination containers. The pairings of orange and pink purslane with white calibrachoa looks great poolside. And I love this combo of the Mississippi Medallion orange sunpatiens and Vermillionaire cupvia along with foxtail fern and chartreuse lysomachia. By blending different styles, ornamentals and edibles, you can create a really nice landscape. I'm MSU Extension Horticulture Specialist Gary Bachman, and I hope you'll join us next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, Water Wars, an extended follow-up on a recent story. As droughts continue, competition for water access more intense. In the High Plains, a century-old water deal in sharper focus as Colorado and Nebraska seek supply. In this case, a tug-of-war over the South Platte River. Meanwhile, farmers coping with a changing climate play a waiting game with no end in sight. A fight over water rights, that's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith, and their right to make their own plans and arrive at their own decisions, and their ability and power to enlarge their lives and plan for the happiness of those they love. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. That these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance toward the views of others. I believe that education is a lifelong process and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. Yet another rebound last week, at least for row crops.
That's right. Corn, soybeans, wheat, all up, while livestock down. We'll be getting into all of that and more. But first, the numbers. How did markets close last Friday, and what does it mean? And then our row report. 2 commodities to follow and why they're going up. And finally, the August cattle on feed report and what it says about the current stock of, well, stock. Markets last week back on the upswing. Livestock the only losses. Seems with harvest season getting a start, we're now seeing the results of the ongoing Midwest drought. Let's take a look. Last week's biggest loss, lean hogs down 2 1/4 cents. Not too much of a fall, but it is the lowest price we've seen so far this year. Last week's biggest gain, soybeans up 60 3/4 cents. It's followed by corn at 41 3/4 cents and wheat at 39 3/4 cents respectively, and it's the latter two we'll be talking about. So we're seeing grain prices rise again, and the reason appears to be weather again. In particular, this ongoing drought, which would be bad enough, but now we're adding heat to the situation, and that makes things even more challenging. Market analyst Ted Seifert went on a crop tour in Nebraska, and what he saw is indicative of corn and wheat country right now. And the news was not good.
Wheat kind of has its own things going on, right? And, you know, about midweek, there were reports that Russia is stepping it up or looking for a new initiative in the Ukraine, which is part of the reason why you had like crude oil sharply higher earlier in the week. But that certainly affects the wheat market too, because a lot of the areas that now Russia has gained control of, there's a lot of wheat there. So now is that Russian wheat? Either way, wheat is still very much looking at the global situation, the macroeconomics of everything, but then also, yeah, paying attention to what's happening in the crop tour. And you know, when you start hearing really concerning corn numbers, you start saying, wheat, feed, residual, I wonder how much of that lower supply in corn means we're going to have to lean a little bit more on the wheat. So there's always, wheat being such a global entity, there's always a lot of things pushing and pulling wheat. But yeah, I think the corn's reaction to the crop tour had something to do with wheat trading this week as well. I would say in the now 8 years that I've done crop tour, most of them when I come back, I think, you know, there I saw some interesting things and, you know, it was a good experience, but also, you know, it was pretty much what I was expecting before I left. This is the year where I had an idea in mind, and I think all of us did, and then we get there, and certainly after the first day, we're like, wow, there's something going on here. It can't be the same when we get into the irrigated fields in Nebraska. And then you do, and it's like, oh, no. Yep, this is definitely much different than what we were expecting. I think some of the headlines on some of the bigger news agencies were shocking. It was fairly shocking. It was really eye-opening, yes. So in years past, we've said, you know, okay, here's pictures of dry crops. And look, in any given year, even if it's a really good year, we're going to find some pictures of something that's not good. Somebody missed out. It's just a little tiny corridor or something like that. You're always going to find those pictures. And then you're also going to say, hey, you know, we've had years, especially in Nebraska, where we've had a lot of stuff showing up on the drought monitor, but then we get in to check yields, and it's really not that bad. A lot of that has to do with irrigation, but also, you know, with the seed technology that we're using, at times we've started to say, you know, is corn bulletproof at this point? And the answer to that, after this year, is a resounding no. But it's got to be that combination of drought and heat. If you have one or the other, you're still going to have yields that are better than what you would think they would be. But if you have both of those at the same time, and in particular the heat, that's the one that's really going to have a negative effect on a corn crop. And we really, really saw that this year. Again, irrigated fields in Nebraska that you would expect to say, well, we know the dry land's not going to be great, but the irrigated fields, they're irrigated, it'll be there. Maybe it's not going to be their best year, but it'll be pretty consistently good. And you get in and you start looking around and you start pulling ears and you start, you know, doing your count and you're like, wow, you know, this field should be a 210 and it's at a 168. What's going on here? And you move to the next one and you find the same thing and you say, wow, okay, there's really some issues here. And you can see in just how the corn cobs have developed that heat had been a problem sort of throughout.
2 weeks ago, the August cattle on feed report dropped, and we could say it may have had a hand in lowering prices, which means it contained some interesting info. Cattle and calves on feed up 1% from August last year, which is the second highest inventory since 1996. Placements in feedlots, 1.77 million head, up 2% from last year. Marketings of fed cattle totaled 1.83 million head, down 4% from last year. And other disappearance totaled 56,000, up 2% from last year. And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Looks like this year's crop may not be good enough to beat back supply issues these past few years, and with the Ukraine war still on, that's made it challenging too. A shortage may be on the horizon, but it's not here yet. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. This week's feature, an extended version of a story we brought you a couple of weeks ago, a water battle between thirsty states. Water rights are constant stories in California, but allotment holders farther east in Colorado and Nebraska are facing some of the same issues. Here's John Torpy.
At the Colorado Department of Agriculture, we are eyes wide open that we are dealing with a real climate crisis, and agriculture is among the first impacted. We've got folks.
Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture Kate Greenberg is well aware that this climate crisis has impacted farmers in the eastern part of the state. Each year, those farmers play a waiting game to learn how much water will be in their allotment. Mark Arnish is a third-generation eastern Colorado farmer, working the land purchased by his grandfather, who emigrated from Austria in 1952.
The underpinning water supply that we depend upon year over year is from the South Platte River. And imagine not knowing what you could do on your farm because you didn't know what your allocation was for water.
The start of that waiting game goes back to 1923, when Colorado and Nebraska ratified a water-sharing agreement involving the South Platte River. One section of this interstate compact allows Nebraska to develop a canal in Colorado to divert water from the South Platte River for irrigation on farms in the western part of the Cornhusker State. As the mega drought scorches the high plains in western U.S., water officials in Colorado closely monitor flows on the South Platte River to ensure farmers and ranchers in both Nebraska and Colorado are getting their fair share. Kevin Ryan is the director of the Colorado Division of Water Resources.
And the compact recognizes that during the irrigation season, that is between April 1st and October 15th, we'll measure that flow. And if that flow is above 120 cubic feet per second, then there is really no action to take.
But with no end in sight for drought conditions, both states are laying claim to the precious resource that stretches through 3 states. In this year's legislative session, Nebraska lawmakers passed a bill greenlighting the construction of the Perkins County Canal, which is the source of the dispute between the 2 states.
Obviously, we're going to be praying for rain here to be able to help us out. But again, it just emphasizes the importance of these projects, especially this Perkins County Canal project, that we go forward with this to assure that we'll continue to have the water resources for the future. If we allow Colorado to take our water, that's that much less water we'll have, for example, for Lincoln drinking water.
There's a hierarchy for water in the 2 states, with senior water rights, all operations with allotment agreements started before 1897, and junior water rights, all those operators who started after that year. Drought conditions can interfere with the seamless allotment of obligated water as the compact puts a priority on farmers with senior water rights.
The flow drops below 120 cubic feet per second, then Colorado needs to curtail water rights on the lower end of the South Platte. If we curtail those water rights, then we are in compliance with the compact during the irrigation season.
One season of cutbacks in water allotments can seriously affect a farmer's bottom line. The agreement arranged between Nebraska and Colorado is one of 9 interstate compacts the Centennial State has with neighboring states.
We're a headwater state. We're responsible for delivering water to many states and the country of Mexico downriver from us. That adds yet another layer to our responsibility as a headwater state and to the challenges that we see with hydrological drought.
Officials with the Colorado Department of Water Resources note when drought conditions are low, these water sharing agreements rarely become a long drawn out issue. As D3 and D4 drought conditions continue for Colorado in 2022, farmers continue to worry about how much water will be available for this and future growing seasons.
We have a lot of competing interests for our water here in Colorado, not just amongst commodities, but even with the urban-rural divide that we have here. Within agriculture, we try to add value to our water, whether that's growing a value-added crop, being a little bit divergent in the marketplace. But here on our farm, we're trying to add value by creating markets.
Creating those additional markets can be a struggle when farmers have to fallow fields and still attempt to make the remaining acres cover the loss.
When we idle acres, it's like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. You know, we still have those overhead costs. We still have taxes to pay. We still have the carry cost of that land for that year, and yet we're not going to have a crop until the following year. But it helps us be better managers. It helps us be better planners, and it helps us to think out 2 and 3 years instead of just trying to, provide that crop this year. Drought is something that I've had to deal with almost my entire farming career. That goes with farming in the high plains of eastern Colorado. We rely upon snowmelt. We rely upon a lot of weather from time to time. So in the 25 years that I've been farming, drought seems like it's just right around every corner.
Arnish and his family farm around 2,200 acres in what's called Prospect Valley, a diverse agricultural area located 45 miles northeast of Denver. Arnish has been forced to change the makeup of his row crop farm 9 times to adapt to the changing climate.
Water touches everything here in eastern Colorado, and the way our rules and regulations have changed over time in Colorado are really impacting my farm.
Noting changes in the amount of available water, Arnish has changed his business plan to growing certified seed wheat, certified seed grains for the spirit and beer industry, and value-added feed ingredients.
We're trying to be different in the marketplace. I wouldn't say niche, I would say value-added, but the things that we do on our farm that are rewarding us and rewarding the value of our water.
With the La Nina weather pattern currently calling the shots for the coming spring and summer, farmers and ranchers in eastern Colorado may have to continue the same kind of flexible approach.
And our agricultural community is at the front lines of all of those issues: climate change, persistent ongoing drought, and making sure we are meeting our obligations to other states in the country of Mexico in a way that also helps preserve and advance agriculture.
Stark reminder of just how complicated our need for natural resources is. Well, next week, a great success story with an unlikely beginning. Years ago, critics told them, "You guys are nuts. It's never going to work." They said they were so stupid, they did it anyway.
What it turned into was farmer ground flour, a milling operation that went from nothing to running 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It's all part of the American dream, and it actually got a helping hand from the pandemic. All that and more next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. See you next week. Thanks for watching.